David Moyes. So the year is 2013 and Man United have just won their 13th Premier League title. And Sir Alex announces that he's leaving Manchester United after 26 years as the manager of the most successful team in Premier League history. But now it was time to find his replacement, and that's where David Moyes comes in. On paper, Moyes was a really good pick for the Man United manager job. He spent over a decade at Everton, where he actually built decent squads with small amount of budgets. He had a lot of qualities that aligned with Man United. He was well respected, hardworking, and he was even Scottish, just like Fergie. And Sir Alex even handpicked him as his successor. But as we all know, football is a very cruel sport. Even before the 2013-14 season started, they had a pretty terrible transfer window. They missed out on most of their targets with the likes of Leighton Baines, Cesc Fabregas, and Fabio from Real Madrid. In the end, the only notable signing they made was Marouane Fellaini from Everton on deadline day. And with that, the season began, and let's be honest, it didn't go as planned. They lost to West Brom at home and got absolutely hammered 4-1 by Man City. And they even got beat by Moyes' old club Everton at home for the first time in 20 years. The Champions League wasn't much different either. They suffered a scare against Olympiacos in the first leg of the Champions League round of 16, but they pulled through in the end when Van Persie scored a hat-trick to send them to the quarterfinals. But it didn't matter in the end because they ended up getting knocked out by Bayern. Back in the league, things weren't getting any better. 2 back-to-back home losses to City and Liverpool were the final straw for the fans. In the end, he got sacked after just 10 months in charge, the shortest managerial reign at Manchester United in decades. Ryan Giggs ended up taking over as interim manager, but let's be honest, the damage had already been done. Man United finished 7th that season and missed out on European football altogether. Louis van Gaal. After the disaster of the David Moyes era, United set out to find a manager that had a little more to him. Someone who could restore a sense of order at Man United again. That's where Louis van Gaal comes in. He was a tactical manager who already managed at heavyweight teams like Ajax, Barcelona, and Bayern. In 2014, he was actually coming off the back of a 3rd place finish with the Dutch national squad in the 2014 World Cup. He came to United with a reputation of being one of the boldest managers in world football. And off the rip, Man United's board gave him the checkbook to bring his new system to life. In that summer, they bought Di Maria, Falcao, Ander Herrera, Luke Shaw, and Daley Blind. In his first season, which was the 2014-15 season, they finished 4th, bringing Champions League football back to Old Trafford, which was progress compared to Moyes, but the football wasn't always pretty. Van Gaal loved possession, sometimes a little too much. Fans called it LVG ball. It was slow, sometimes it was just like sideways passing, waiting for an opening that never came, but still, on some occasions, it worked wonders. Beating Liverpool 3-0 and Manchester City 4-2 at Old Trafford gave fans hope. But then, his second season came, and things were shaky to say the least. 2015-16 was rough, if we're being honest. United struggled for goals. Van Gaal was trying all sorts of experiments like Wayne Rooney in midfield, young players like Marcus Rashford and Jesse Lingard getting thrown in. And actually, Rashford, to be fair, exploded under him, scoring twice on his debut in the Europa League, then twice more against Arsenal 3 days later. So credit to him, he was actually giving the academy players a chance. By the end of the season though, United finished 5th in the league, missing out on Champions League football again. However, it wasn't all doom and gloom that season because in May of 2016, he led United to the FA Cup, their first major trophy since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. Jesse Lingard scored this beautiful volley in extra time against Crystal Palace. But then just 2 days later after this game, he was sacked. And they already had the next manager, and it's a guy that you might know really well, Jose Mourinho. So after 2 airballs with Moyes and now Louis van Gaal, United decided they need a proven winner, someone that was ruthless, someone who could bring instant success to Manchester United again. And that's where Jose Mourinho comes in. Mourinho was a manager who's been there and done that. Champions League with Porto and Inter, league titles in England, Italy, and Spain. And he came to Old Trafford with 1 goal and 1 goal only, and that was to win, no matter how. And that's exactly what he did. In his first season, the 2016-17 season, United won 3 trophies, the Community Shield, the League Cup, and the Europa League, where they beat Ajax in the final, which technically was a treble. Yes, I know it wasn't the same type of treble United fans remembered from 1999, but hey, silverware is silverware. But most importantly, that Europa League win got Man United back into Champions League football. United finished 6th in the league that year, but trophies covered the cracks. Then his second season came and things actually looked promising. Mourinho's United finished 2nd in the Premier League with 81 points, their highest total since Sir Alex Ferguson left. But even then, the warning signs were still there. The football wasn't pretty. Actually, it was the opposite. Mourinho's style was defensive, pragmatic, built on counter-attacking football. To Jose Mourinho, the results mattered more than the entertainment. And while fans want trophies, they also want attacking football, and this wasn't it. By his 3rd season, the cracks split wide open. Mourinho clashed with players, most famously with Paul Pogba, and on the pitch, things wasn't much better. United started poorly in the 2018-19 season, and as the season went on, losses started piling up. They were 6th in December, and the final straw was a 3-1 defeat to Liverpool at Anfield, because just 2 days after this game, Jose Mourinho was sacked as the manager of Manchester United. Ole Gunnar Solskjær. This guy was a guy that United fans were already very familiar with, the 1999 Champions League final hero, a true club legend. And at first, he wasn't even permanent. He was just the interim boss. He was basically a feel-good appointment to steady the ship. In his very first month, Ole's United went on a crazy run, which included that night in Paris. Down 2-0 from the first leg against PSG, United pulled off a miracle at the Parc des Princes Stadium. Marcus Rashford smashed in a last-minute penalty, and genuinely, it felt like United were back. But the next few years were very rocky, to say the least. In the 2019-20 season, United finished third in the league and made 3 semi-finals: the Europa League, the FA Cup, and the League Cup. They didn't win nothing, but it was decent progress. Then in the 2021 season, Ole guided them to second in the Premier League. They even made it to the Europa League final that year against Villarreal, but they ended up losing on penalties after David De Gea scored his last penalty. And that became the story of Ole's reign. He brought the stability, he brought the belief, but when it came to crossing the line, that last step of actually winning the trophy, he just wasn't able to do it. By late 2021, things were going pretty hectic for Ole. Despite Ronaldo's return, United's form collapsed. Heavy defeats to Liverpool and Watford sealed his fate. In November of that year, after 3 years in charge, Ole was sacked. Ralf Rangnick. Who? This would have been the reaction for most Premier League fans at the time, including me. We just didn't know who this guy was. But in Germany, apparently he was a big deal. According to Bundesliga fans, he was this big tactician who inspired the likes of Klopp, Tuchel, and Nagelsmann. The man who basically built the RB Leipzig project, nicknamed the godfather of gegenpressing. On paper, the guy was a football genius, but was it the right style for Manchester United? Not so much. Ralf Rangnick was supposed to be the interim manager for 6 months with a plan to then move upstairs and join the board after that. The idea was simple. He'd bring structure, a style of play, and maybe even prepare the squad for the next manager. But the reality of the situation was, this squad wasn't built to press, like at all. I mean, you can't expect to play high intensity, high press style of play with a 36-year-old Ronaldo and a double pivot of Pogba and Matic. Like, come on. By the end of the 21-22 season, United finished 6th, and Ralf Rangnick didn't exactly help. The guy was like Jose Mourinho. He spoke his mind. In press conferences, he admitted the squad needed open heart surgery. He called out players for being unfit, and he even said the club needed 10 new players at least. It was brutal truths, which the fans actually kind of liked, but inside the team, it caused the locker room to go into shambles. His biggest achievement was probably giving debuts to a couple young players, but apart from that, it was nothing much. When Erik ten Hag was appointed as the new permanent manager, the plan was for Rangnick to stay as a consultant, but almost immediately, the idea vanished. By May 2022, he was gone, out the door, and he went to manage the Austrian national team instead. Erik ten Hag. So after the Rangnick era, United turned to a proven modern coach, Erik ten Hag from Ajax. This guy had just taken Ajax to a Champions League semi-final a few years before in 2019, developed young stars, and played a very expansive attacking style of play. But most importantly though, he was a disciplined type of manager, and at the time, that's exactly what United needed. From day one, Ten Hag set the tone. No egos, no BS, just straight work. He introduced strict rules, players were getting fined if they're late, no special treatment for the big names, and everyone has to eat together at Carrington. After years of reports about a toxic dressing room, this was a kind of reset for the club, and this discipline low-key showed on the pitch. In his first season, the 22-23 season, United ended up finishing 3rd in the Premier League, securing Champions League football again. But most importantly though, they finally ended their trophy drought. In February of 2023, United beat Newcastle at Wembley to win the Carabao Cup, their first silverware in 6 years. He even led Manchester United to the FA Cup final, even though they lost to Manchester City's treble-winning side. Not a perfect season, but compared to what came before, it was a big step forward. But Ten Hag's reign wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, actually far from it. By the 23-24 season, cracks started to appear. Injuries piled up, performances dipped, and United struggled for consistency. Heavy defeats, shaky form, and questions about the recruitment returned. In May 2024, Manchester United won the FA Cup final against Manchester City, earning Ten Hag a second major trophy with the club and securing a spot in the 24-25 Europa League. Erik ten Hag was sacked by Manchester United in October of that year following a bad start to the Premier League season, and his countryman Ruud van Nistelrooy was named as the interim coach. Ruben Amorim. Now we're in the present day. He's not the obvious Manchester United type of manager, but that's exactly what made the move so interesting. Amorim was one of Europe's hottest emerging managers. United just couldn't pass up on the opportunity to sign him. But since then, it hasn't been ideal to say the least. He's still at the club right now, so it wouldn't be fair to judge him until his time at Manchester United has finally come to an end. So we'll save that conversation for another day. And with that being said, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe because best believe we are here to take over.